Listen to my prayer, O God. Do not ignore my plea. Hear me and answer me. My thoughts trouble me, and I am distraught at the voice of the enemy, at the stares of the wicked. For they bring down suffering upon me and revile me in their anger. My heart is in anguish within me. The terrors of death assail me. Fear and trembling have beset me. Horror has overwhelmed me. I said, oh, that I had the wings of a dove. I would fly away and be at rest. I would flee far away and stay in the desert. I would hurry to my place of shelter, far from the tempest and storm. Confuse the wicked, O Lord, confound their speech, for I see violence and strife in the city. Day and night they prowl about on its walls. Malice and abuse are within it. Destructive forces are at work in the city. Threats and lies never leave its streets. If an enemy were insulting me, I could endure it. If a foe were raising himself against me, I could hide from him. But it is you, a man like myself, my companion, my close friend, with whom I once enjoyed sweet fellowship as we walked with the throng at the house of God. Let death take my enemies by surprise. Let them go down alive to the grave, for evil finds lodging among them. But I call to God, and the Lord saves me. Evening, morning, and noon I cry out in distress, and he hears my voice. He ransoms me unharmed from the battle waged against me, even though many oppose me. God, who is enthroned forever, will hear them and afflict them, men who never change their ways and have no fear of God. My companion attacks his friends. He violates his covenant. His speech is smooth as butter, yet war is in his heart. His words are more soothing than oil, yet they are drawn swords. Cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous fall. But you, O God, will bring down the wicked into the pit of corruption. Bloodthirsty and deceitful men will not live out half their days. But as for me, I trust in you. Amen. If you want a text, I suppose I ought to give you one as a preacher. It's the first half of verse 22. Cast your cares on the Lord. And he will sustain you. The Psalms are songs of devotion, and they're written out of the experience of life. And if anybody tells me that the Bible has no relevance or meaning to our lives today, then it's a whole load of bunkum, if you don't mind me saying. It's rubbish. Some people say that, if you're going to go and live on a desert island somewhere, and you're only going to choose one book out of the Bible to take with you on that long time that you're going to spend on a desert island under your palm tree, which book would it take? And most people I know would vote for the book of Psalms, because the Psalms speak out of experience. The Psalms speak out of your heart. The Psalms are the outpouring and the expression of men's hearts to God in praise, in times of difficulty, in many experiences of life, but they're the expression of the heart. And what I want to talk about today, it's a very important principle, and it's as a pastor, you become aware that as you get experience with people, and even with believers, it's not a principle that every believer understands. And it's not a discipline, what I'm going to talk about. It's not a discipline that every Christian actually learns to put into practice. But it is a very scriptural discipline. And to my mind, it's a very important principle that we get hold of. And the principle's right here in verse 22. It's the principle and it's the discipline of learning to cast your care on the Lord. And finding in experience, therefore, that he will sustain you. learning to cast your care on the Lord. Our tendency, even as believers very often, is to keep our care within. We go through a difficult time, we go through a difficult patch, we're going through a difficult experience, of whatever nature it may be. So we get worried and we get distraught and so on, deep within our own being. But our tendency is still to keep that care, that worry, that anxiety, that feeling, those whatever within us. We keep it within us instead of learning to do what the scriptures tell us to do, and that is to learn to cast it on the Lord. I will try to explain that. Not quite sure how good it will be, but we'll try. Here's David. We don't know the situation that he was in, but it was probably written around the time of Absalom's rebellion against him in Jerusalem when he was king. And if you read the psalm through, you just get the message. Is that the whole kingdom in Jerusalem is beginning to fall apart. There's rebellion, there's destruction, which sounds like the time when Absalom, his son, rebelled against him. And he's referring to one particular person, one person in particular in verses 13, 14, 20 and 21, where he was actually dealing with a situation that involved somebody probably in his family or a very, very close friend of his that had actually turned out to betray him. And it was causing David all kinds of problems deep within his own soul, all kinds of worry and distraught feelings. So if you look at, just look through this very quickly in verse 2, it says, "My thoughts trouble me, and I am distraught at the voice of the enemy and the stares of the wicked." So when David was going through this difficult time, his mind mentally within him was filled with thoughts that were troubling him, and he was distraught. Not just at what he was hearing from the enemy and the people around him, but also at the voices and the words that they were speaking to him, and even the looks in their eye when they met him when he was walking down the street or when they came to see him. His thoughts were troubling him. Look at verse 4. It says, "My heart is in anguish within me." So not only are his thoughts troubling, he has a lack of peace also deep within another part of his being, that which we call the heart, the inner soul, the inner seat of affections within him. So not only is his mind troubled, his heart is also troubled as well. Verse 5, "Fear and trembling have beset me. Horror has overwhelmed me." So it's affecting also his emotions. He mentions the word fear, trembling, feeling of horror coming over him, anxiety and anguish and so on. Verse 13, it comes down to a relational issue. We just mentioned that. "It is you, a man like myself, whom I once enjoyed sweet fellowship with as we walked with the throng at the house of God." He felt betrayed by somebody that he had a close relationship with. So it was affecting his entire being. It's affecting his mind. It's affecting his heart. It's affecting his emotions. It's affecting his relationships. He's caught in a situation, even as a believer and as a king, where the effect of the circumstances that he's going through is having a very strong and a very negative impact upon his own being. Now, if you tell me that when you become a Christian everything's going to be hunky-dory, I'll chuck you out of the building as a heretic, because it's simply not true. And it does not square with the scriptures that I read. What I read in the Bible are people that live very, very real lives, where your faith is forced to interact with the realities of everyday life, with whatever everyday life may bring forth for you and for me. And for you, it may bring forth different things than it does for me. But our general experience of life will be more or less the same as we move through the different stages of life. But faith is forced to interact with that reality. And the story of the Psalms very often, what you see mirrored in David's life is the internal battle where you've got faith on the one hand that's very real, but very real and very hurtful, and negative circumstances on the other, which having a very strong effect within his being. And the story of David is that internal battle within him and learning to deal with that battle that's going on within you. Yeah, are you with me? So he says to himself in verse 6 what we all want to say, oh, that I had the wings of a dove, I might just fly away and find my place of refuge. I want to run away. I don't want to be here in the midst of all of these problems and the issues that are going on around me. It would be much easier for me to pack my bags and run away. At least if I can run away, I can be on my own. And at least if I may take all of these negative feelings with me, but at least if I'm on my own somewhere, maybe I could deal with them, maybe not. But at least I won't be in the midst of the problems anymore. It's easier to run away. Have you ever been there? Yes. Of course you have. Of course you have. Anybody that says they haven's a liar. You just wait till it happens next time and then come and tell me. You want to run away. You want to run away. Oh, that I had the wings of a dove. I'd fly away, it says. I'd flee. I would hurry. I'd catch the next train out of town. I'd get in the car and press that gas down till it recorded 70, not even 30. I'd fly. I'd run away. I would hurry. That's the reality of it. And sometimes when you're a pastor in particular and people come to you or you visit them and you go to see them, very often you sense that battle going on deep within their lives. And they are more or less where David was in Psalm 55. Psalm 55 is simply an outpouring of the way David felt and what he was going through. But look here. Look here. Look in verse 1. David says, listen to my prayer, O God. Do not ignore my plea. Hear me and answer me. And this is where you begin to see the difference between the believer and the non-believer. The non-believer does not have a refuge of the kind that David had. The non-believer has no understanding of God. The non-believer has no knowledge of God. The non-believer is locked out because of his unbelief and his lack of knowledge of the things of God. He's locked out of that very grace and that refuge that every Christian has recourse to when they're going through a difficult time. The believer will stop with the pouring out of his negative feelings. I've got these thoughts in my head. I've got these feelings in my heart. I want to pack my bags. I want to run away. I want to explode. I want to do something, but I don't want to be here going through this. And very often the non-believer ends up keeping those negative feelings inside, bottling them up, expressing them from time to time. But the end result thereof is normally bitterness. Bitterness. And sometimes even as a believer, we can find ourselves in situations like that, but we can fail to actually act the way David acted. And this is the principle I want to point out. That to go through these kind of negative circumstances and whatever it may be in your life, and for you it'll be different than it was for David, but you feel the same way. The important thing is this, that you learn to do what David did. See, there's nothing special about you if you remain in your negativity and your bitterness and your anger and your frustration and the screaming of your soul inside. There's nothing special about you. That does not make you unique. Everybody goes through it. but your response to it then marks you out as being somebody different. It marks out the reality of your faith.